Are you thinking about going solar, but you're not sure if adding a battery is worth the cost? Or maybe you already have solar and you're wondering how you might benefit by adding a battery. Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how batteries work, how they save you money, and whether or not a battery is right for your home. So why would you add a battery to your solar energy system? Here's a few key points. First off, having a battery allows you to take advantage of your solar energy production that you generated in the daytime so that you can now use it at nighttime. By running your battery at night, you get to avoid the most expensive rates, and during a blackout, you can keep all of your essential loads running through that battery as well. By the way, I'm Nick with Forme Solar, and we got our start in the solar energy business by fixing the mistakes that other solar installers make. We learned a lot through that process, and we also learned what mistakes to avoid. Now, if you're in Southern California and you're interested in getting a solar energy system installed right the first time, click the link below and we'll be in touch. Let's talk about how batteries work. A battery is basically like a giant energy sponge that will save excess energy and store it away chemically so that you can discharge it later in the evening, for example. Most batteries in the past were made of components that are similar to what's in your laptop or your cell phone, where it's a lithium-based battery. For those customers who are concerned about their batteries catching fire, you've heard about EVs that suddenly combust. That really doesn't happen with this kind of chemistry anymore. For the past few years at least, all manufacturers have moved towards a lithium iron phosphate chemistry. It actually has much better thermal properties, which is similar, less likely to catch fire, and has a lot more cycles built into it for the long run. This has proven to be the safest chemistry around for home-based batteries. So let's move on to our third point, power versus energy, otherwise known as output versus capacity. So in a battery, when you're considering the different specs, the two most important ones that you're going to talk about are going to be how much power can it output and how much capacity does it have. So if we were to compare it to something like this glass of water, for example, the entire volume of this glass of water is the capacity, the amount of energy that this can hold. The same applies to your battery. Now let's say, for example, your home requires, let's say 10 kilowatts of continuous energy to power all the loads in the house. All right, so if this is my battery, right, and I've got 10 kilowatt hours here, and I need to draw 10 kilowatts of continuous energy so I can power my microwave, my fridge, whatever else I have going on in the house. I'm going to take the capacity of the battery here, let's say that's 5 kilowatts, and I can start drawing on energy. So if you need extra power, for example, you're running a load of laundry in the evening and you need to pull more from the battery at the same time, you're going to have a way to get that extra energy in there. Now, if your capacity is set or your power output is only set at 5 kilowatts at any given time, some home batteries will then require you to pull from the grid to make up for that difference, which we're going to demonstrate with this straw here. So now this is the utility company coming in and now supplementing the rest of what I need to run my household. And so now I've got both. There you go, laundry done. However, because our capacity is limited, I may have drained the battery all the way down to my minimum reserve level. So the answer to that would be, well, maybe I need a little bit more capacity. Okay, so on to our next point, AC versus DC coupling. These are terms that you may have heard while you're doing your shopping or research on solar energy systems, but essentially, those are the two categories that systems will break down into these days. For systems that are typically using microinverters, those are going to be AC coupled systems, and those that are using string inverters or hybrid inverters are typically going to be your DC coupled system. Now granted, there are workarounds that allow these two systems to kind of intermingle, but there are some pretty strict limitations as well. So we're going to just talk about the most basic forms and how you're going to wind up choosing coupling with one versus the other. So when it comes to both cost and simplicity of install, DC coupled systems are typically going to be the ones you're going to go with. We would typically recommend those for customers who are starting out with brand new solar and energy storage, because then you can make sure that the solar also matches the battery. There are different systems out there that run on DC only. Something like a Tesla Powerwall is primarily DC. However, with some workarounds, you can make it AC coupled, assuming that you can get the parts and you can find an installer that actually has the chops to do it. Most of the time, if we're talking about a net new system, you're going to want to go with DC coupling because a lot of the batteries these days actually come with a built-in hybrid inverter. It also means that there are going to be less things to install, such as microinverters for every single panel. So the install itself is more simple, therefore the cost is a little bit less, and the efficiency is actually a little bit higher. However, that's really for net new systems. If you're interested in going with the DC coupled route. On the flip side, you also have AC coupled systems. Primarily, we're really talking about systems that use microinverters, typically the kind that you would find from Enphase, for example. Not all battery systems play well with this type of setup. If you're going to do a Tesla Powerwall 3, you do need to have specific gateways in order to make that happen. On the flip side, if you were to get a Franklin whole home battery, those are really designed to be attached to AC coupled systems or existing systems. And so the retrofit on that is actually going to be much easier with no workaround required. So we get to our last point, and this is a question that we get asked the most, obviously, is will adding a battery actually save me money? And based on our experience and all the customers that we've installed until now, the answer across the board for us is yes. Anytime that you're able to produce and consume your own energy without having to pull from the utility company, it is almost always going to be cheaper going that route than any other route. Now, granted, your net metering rules in your area may be different, but what we find here in Southern California is if you're going to rely on the utility company credits to drive meaningful savings, that is no longer a tenable scenario. The amount of credit that you get back for every kilowatt hour you send just isn't worth it. But this is why you add in a battery. And yes, we understand that batteries can be expensive, with up to $15,000 per install for a battery. That's not a small amount. However, what we found is when we have solar customers who do not have a battery under NEM 3.0, they typically are looking at about 10 to 15 year payback period. However, by adding a battery and being able to mitigate the cost at night, that payback period actually shrinks down to between 5 to 7 years in most cases. And that's without factoring in rate increases. In this day and age, batteries have now become incredibly flexible, powerful, and very reliable. What we're finding is that all of our customers are enjoying not only great savings, but also a good amount of energy independence, especially during a blackout when all of their utilities remain on while the rest of the neighborhood is in the dark. With smart features like load management and the ability to hook up a backup generator, most families are able to find a battery solution that fits not only their lifestyle needs, but also their energy needs. So if you're in Southern California and you're interested in getting a solar energy system, click the link in the description below and we'd be happy to help. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to click the like and subscribe for more helpful clean energy tips.